Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Last week I restored the Silver Pearl 1944 Parker Vacumatic, and this week it is the Golden Pearl's turn for a resurrection. And I was really excited about doing this one. I've held off for a number of weeks. I've had this for a number of weeks, and I've held off from cleaning it up. It sort of sat here dingy on my desk, crying out for cleaning. One of the reasons I couldn't get at this one right away was that I had run out of standard Vacumatic diaphragms, latex diaphragms. I got my order in from Pen Tooling, so I was able to do the Silver Pearl last week. I also got from Pen Tooling some of these ebonite pellet holders that go on the end of the pump. I've got 4 of them here, because I've got a number of pumps that need them, and they tend to break on me. While I was at Pen Tooling, I picked up this aerometric sack as well. You never know when you might need one of those. Let's triage this Parker Vacumatic. As I mentioned, it is a 1944. I can see that on the date code. Let's find the imprint. There's the imprint. Let's get it closer. There's the imprint right there. And right at the end of the imprint is a .4 dot, which is the second quarter of 1944. So the imprint is fairly substantial on this pen, but the pen is overall really grimy. The clip is loose and dingy. The blue diamond is still intact. So hopefully I can polish this without losing the blue diamond, but if that happens, I can repaint it. The top finial is in good shape, but loose. As I said, the Golden Pearl stacked celluloid is still very chatoyant, even though it is so dingy and dark. The cap band looks almost brass, but I know that that's gold filled, and comes up very, very nicely under polishing. Take the Vacumatic blind cap off, and there's no diaphragm in there at all. If there's anything in there, it's all dried and desiccated and remnants. When you check it for bite marks and gouges, there's one big one right there and another one. So maybe this is a biter. Moving around, there's some scratches along here. No cracks in the cap lip, and just a lot of wear. Let's unscrew the cap. We see the section is in good shape, no gouges or nicks, and there's that nib. Again, you can hardly see that arrow or the Parker imprint on it. It is so old and dingy, but that's gold, old gold. Looks like the feed and the nib are misaligned a little bit, but there's no chunks out of that ebonite feed. It looks pretty good. The section won't come off. I might have to use some heat, but I haven't even soaked this yet. So first thing we're going to do with this pen is we're going to put it in the ultrasonic bath of Pen Flush, which is 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia. And we'll let it sit for several minutes, and then we'll see whether that section comes off and whether we can get that pump out. Squeaky, squeaky. So here's the pen out of the bath. I used some rubber gripping material to try to get that top jewel off, but it's not budging. So I'm going to give it some PMPPP number 7, which is Pensbury Manor Penetrate Potion number 7. And we're going to let it sit for a bit. Just a drop, and on the inside as well. And we'll let that sit and see whether that'll help that jewel come out of there. In the meantime, I'm going to see if I can get this section off without any heat first. Yep, and it's moving. So just a little bit, maybe 3 minutes in the pen bath. It loosened up all of that old ink right there. And there's the nib feeding section. On the Silver Pearl, that was shellacked shut, and I needed quite a bit of heat to get it off. This is normal. They're not supposed to be glued shut. So this will go in the pen bath and we'll get rid of all that gunk and old ink. And there's the breather tube. And I'll run a guitar string down through that breather tube to clean out all that old ink. And then we'll knock that feed out and get at that nib. And we'll put this in the bath as well. Let's take a look with my inspection camera down the barrel and see what we can see. And we can see that the tip of that diaphragm has been dislodged. So the first thing that happened out of the bath was that pellet and part of the desiccated diaphragm fell out. That might be the cup. I'm not sure. Hard piece of something or other. It looks like petrified diaphragm and part of a pellet, but we won't know until I get that vacuum pump off. The first thing I want to do is try to knock this feed out and take a look at that nib. Yeah, it doesn't want to budge, so it needs more soaking. And let's see whether we can get that pump off with the vac extractor from the inky nib. Put the collet on the back of the pump, lock the collet down, get some gripper material, see if we can turn it. Yep, there we go. Slowly, don't want to break the celluloid. And we leave 2 threads on there and release the collet. And then try to push it out with the rod without damaging that ebonite cup, just to dislodge the old diaphragm. There we go. Yeah, and the ebonite pellet receptacle is intact. And there's the pellet inside. So that was just a piece of old desiccated diaphragm right there. It's hard as a rock. And that's all working correctly. Really, really good shape. So I'll drill that pellet out with my Dremel tool, and then we can replace the diaphragm. And now that I got the barrel by itself, I can put it back in the pen flush and also run my test tube brush through it to clean up all the old debris inside there. You can probably see some of the old debris from the old diaphragm in there. And let's drill that pellet out of that cup. Get out a dental tool and pick the remnants out. And there we go. There it is. And that looks pretty good. There we go. Lots of old dried up ink. And there's our grubby nib. Can't see any markings on it yet. We'll have to clean these pieces up and then polish that again and see whether we can see a date code on there. I'll help the process along with a little metal polish, liquid metal polish. There, a lot better. And we have R and no date. That tells me that this is a replacement nib. So it might be a few years later, who knows? But I'm still going to go with the date code on the barrel for this one. This needs a lot more cleaning and polishing and get all that old ink off of there. This has been sitting with old ink in it for a long time. So it's the next morning and I've had the barrel soaking overnight. There's still a lot of old sack still on the inside of that barrel. I've been digging it out with my dental tool a little bit at a time. It's taking a long time. Keep soaking it and scraping it. The entire diaphragm was stuck to the inside of that barrel. So it's much better now. And the feed had lots of old ink on it, still needs to be polished up. And same thing with the breather tube. So they've been soaking overnight. Last night, I polished up the nib with my buffer tool and it looks brand new. And now that it is polished up, you can finally see that .4 dot right there, which is the 1944 date designation. And I had the cap sitting overnight upside down in some PMPPP number 7. And it took all night for that top finial jewel to give up the ghost and come out. Lots of old ink on there. This is all going back in the bath again, and the clip is free and ready to be polished up. But it's interesting, it's got a nickel, silver nickel kind of a backing on it instead of brass. So I'm hoping that the gold fill is deep enough to withstand some polish. Okay, now we're going to get after this clip with some metal polish, and then I'll put it on my buffing wheel. Lots of old grime on that clip. Silver on the underside. This might be vermeil, I'm not sure. Well, we're getting there. Looking better. I'll put on the buffing wheel now. And there you go. Amazing. They build this stuff 80 years old, and they built it to last. I doubt a modern clip would polish up this beautifully. The gold plating on modern stuff is so thin that it rubs off with a couple of swipes with a polish cloth. This has withstood metal polish and a buffer wheel and a jeweler's polishing cloth to get it looking gorgeous. And that blue diamond is still there. I'm stoked about that. Beautiful. Now once I've polished up that feed, I'm going to put the nib and feed together again in the section and with the breather tube and do a dip test to make sure that the nib is writing correctly. Then we'll replace the diaphragm on the pump and put the whole pen back together again. Now we're going to put the nib and feed together and do a dip test. Line up the nib and feed, get some gripper material, put the polished section back in the barrel, and we'll twist it around to find the sweet spot and give it a push. Doesn't look like it's as far as it was. Went a little bit more. Yeah, that's okay. As long as we have cap clearance. Do we have clearance? What's your vector, Victor?
We have clearance, Clarence. Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Huh? Yeah, we got cap clearance. This is good enough to test it anyway. Might be slightly misaligned. Certainly the feed and the nib are slightly misaligned, so I'll reseat that. But that's good enough to test with. Let's see, 1944. Ooh, this is nice already. Parker Vacumatic in golden pearl, 14 karat gold nib. Feels like a fine, probably 0.4 to 0.5 millimeters. Let's check the wetness. It's nicely wet, and it has a little bit of tooth up and down, side to side. Feedback, it's not scratchy, just a lot of feedback. Let's see. And a good amount of bounce. Very nice. This nib is going to be a champ. So I'm going to pull it back out again, or knock it back out actually, and realign it so it's correct. But the first thing I want to do is replace the diaphragm on that pump, and we'll get that back together again so I can put the blind cap back on and then polish up the barrel. Polish up the barrel and the cap. We'll get that gold band sparkling as nicely as the clip. Time to re-diaphragm the pump so that pellet receptacle, ebonite, is in good shape. Pellet at the end of the latex diaphragm, which I've coated with some pure talc. And we're going to first push the pellet with our inky nib pellet pusher into the ebonite receptacle and cross our fingers that it doesn't split. There we go. Sometimes that little pop is very nice to hear. Sometimes it is a little pop with a little crack. It's not so nice to hear. So now the pellet pusher has a little engraving right there, little notch that shows the exact length of the diaphragm to cut. So I'm just going to mark that spot and feel the indentation with my thumb. There it is. I'm just going to mark that spot with my X-Acto blade, and the scissors cut it cleaner than my blade does, so I'm going to do that. And there we go. Add some more talc, and then we'll peel that latex diaphragm back on itself. This either works really nicely or it doesn't work at all. Last time it took me 2 or 3 attempts to get this right. So we get a cuff going and then just worry it back down. And the talc is our lubricant. Sometimes if I get it back onto the seat here, it's doubled back inside, but it helps it if I push the piston out and then pull and push and pull to get that kink out. There we go. Well, that technique seemed to work. Should have done the elapsed time on that. There, that's the way it's supposed to look. Now we get some silicone oil and put it around just the end of the cuff so it doesn't kink inside the barrel. And we let it twist a little bit. Twist, twist, twist to get it in. Engage a couple of threads and put some silicone oil on those threads as well, just for lubrication. Get out our tool, and I'm just going to worry it back and forth on those threads just to make sure that silicone oil gets all around inside there. Clamp down the collet. There, it's nice and tight. Now that should be functioning properly now. It feels like it. Let's take a look with our inspection camera and give it a couple of pushes. Yeah, working nicely. Now I've got the pump back on and working, I'll put the blind cap back on and I can go at that barrel and polish it up. So this is before, and we'll put after in this space right here. So there are some rather serious bite marks here on the blind cap, so I'll try to get those out with 400 grit first. And there you can see how deep they are. There, so I've removed those bite marks and gouges. I don't see any evidence of them left. And there is a nice little score along there as well. So I'm going to go over the rest of the barrel with the 400 grit and avoid the imprint. Then we'll go back through the micro mesh from 1500 grit to 12,000 grit and then finish up with some polishing compound. And there's the barrel all shined up. It looks really, really nice. And there with the brighter light behind it, you can see that wonderful transparency of that celluloid barrel. And now we'll go ahead with the cap. Here's an AB. That's what the barrel looked like before. And that's what it looks like now. I'm going to put some metal polish on that cap band first, and then I'll mask it off for sanding. And there are a couple of gouges, very minor, some scratches that the 400 grit should get out. And here we are, all polished up. Cap and barrel looking almost brand new. Well, I'll say it, brand new. So all we have to do is put the clip back on, put the nib and feed and section back in, and fill it with some ink. And I think I have to tune that nib a little bit to get some of that feedback out of there. And when I cleaned up the feed, you see it polished up really nicely, I discovered there's an L on there. I don't know whether that stands for large.
And Leon's getting larger.
Or love you, or lick me, I don't know. My assumption would be large, but this isn't a large pen. This isn't a Maxima. So I don't know. The R on the nib and the L on the feed, factory codes. So let's put the clip back on. I'm going to put the clip so it's pointing at that cartouche. If you notice the cap band, it has chevrons all around it and is looking very nice and shiny now compared to what it was before. And right at the very front, where are you now? There are no chevrons for about 10 millimeters or so along the front. And that's so you can engrave your initials on it to personalize your pen. So we're going to put the clip so it's pointing right at the center of that cartouche. And then we start the threads. Now some of these jewels are all plastic, and some of them where a plastic jewel that screwed into a brass nut which screwed into the top of the cap. So I'm not quite sure of the date range of those things. Obviously in 1944 they weren't doing the brass nut, so maybe that was later on towards 1946 or 47 or something like that. And it's catching up, so I'm going to check it here in advance to make sure the threads aren't stripped. It was a bear to get it out of there. Yeah, it's got some issues there, so I'm going to check out those threads with my dental tool and see whether I can get it to slide in there properly. The clip was loose when I got it, so maybe that was the issue, that someone's cross-threaded it or something. I've scraped out those threads and got all that old shellac out of there and cleaned up the threads on the jewel as well. So now we're going to reinstall the clip. So I'm going to line up the clip with the center of that cartouche. And we'll start that thread. Get a piece of matting material and screw it down. And then I'm just going to slide it over to about there and then tighten it down, adding a little bit of pressure with a pencil and the rubber gripper just so it tightens in place. There we go. And I straightened that clip a little bit by bending it while I had it off because it was slightly ajar from the end of the clip. Now I've got the nib and feed back in the body of the pen. Let's weigh this and then fill it up and see how much ink it'll take. 10.4 is just about normal for the pen without the cap and empty. Press tear, open up some Watermans, and give it several pumps. And there are bubbles. That's good. I just keep pumping until I hear no more bubbles. Like that. And we got 1.42 milliliters of ink, which is just about normal. Perfect. Reinstall the blind cap, and that nib need a little bit of tuning. So I'm going to do that right now. I've got 8,000 micromesh and 12,000 micromesh, and I just wanted to remove some of the feedback. So the first thing I do is check the nib with my loop just to ensure that the tines are perfectly aligned, and they are. And drop a little bit of water on my 8,000 grit and do the 8 strokes points of the compass. 8 strokes counterclockwise, clockwise, figure 8, figure 8, and then repeat on the 12,000. Now I'm just going to express a little bit of ink by pressing down on the pump rod just to expel some of that water. Oh, that's much better. Much, much better. So it's much smoother. There is a tad of feedback, but it's the way I like it. I can feel the page, but this is ultra smooth. Sometimes a nib can be so smooth that it's glassy and slippery and you lose sort of control on the page, but this is nice. Now I'll come back with my thoughts on this resurrection. So what are my thoughts about this resurrection? Well, this golden pearl resurrection was one of the most satisfying I've ever done. I've resurrected a few of these. I don't think many of them were as dingy and grimy as this one. And it was also satisfying because there wasn't a lot wrong with it other than the dingy nib. The gold hardware was almost black. All the grime all over that beautiful celluloid. Even the pump came out nicely. Nothing broke. The only difficulty I had was getting that top finial out, but with the aid of the Pensbury Manor Penetrate Potion number 7, I was able to soak that and get it to budge. And it wasn't even the PMPPP number 7 that actually loosened it. I think it was the little bit of heat that I put on that because I discovered shellac in there. So someone had an issue with that clip at some point and added a little bit of shellac and screwed that finial down, assuming that it would never need to come off again, and which you should assume never to have to replace that. But if it does get loose on you at all, not having it glued down really helps being able to repair it. So this is such a beautiful pen. I've and it writes so beautifully. I've really been thinking about whether I should be keeping this one. It is a bit fine for me. I have got an Azure Blue Pearl Vacumatic that I custom ground into a stub that just writes like a gem. So I'm not sure that I'll get a lot of use out of this pen. But those of you that appreciate a really nice, juicy, smooth, fine line in a gold vintage nib will really appreciate this pen. So I'm going to give it up for $220 US plus shipping. If you're interested in buying this pen, please contact me at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address, and I'll get you a shipping quote. Shipping to the contiguous North America is about $10 US these days using the new shipping service that I'm using. And if you're a member of my channel, you'll get to see this video first because I'll be putting this up probably today, tomorrow, and today is Tuesday. The rest of you will be seeing it on Sunday as usual. Don't expect this pen to last at this price. If you're interested in what else might be coming, I've got this beautiful 1943 Parker Vacumatic debutante-sized fountain pen, which is in black, but it has a lovely transparency. You can already see those tiger stripes in there. And a really interesting short debutante clip. So this might be my next project right here. It's got a two-tone Parker Arrow 14 karat gold nib, and it looks like it might be a really interesting resurrection for people who have small hands and like small pens. And I just picked up a couple of really interesting pens today for those aficionados of vintage pens. This is an Esterbrook J pen in this beautiful reddish brown celluloid, and I haven't even looked at it. Let's see, it is a 2668 stainless steel nib that looks like it's in really good shape. So I'll be restoring that very soon. These are really fun pens to restore. And here's a brand I've never used before. This is a Scripto. It looks like a pen from the 1950s. And a steel nib. Very, very interesting tubular kind of nib. And it's a cartridge converter pen. So I'll have to see what we can do with that. So there's a few pens that are coming up on the Pen Resurrection Sunday. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to videos the moment I post them, like this one. And that just leaves it for me to say, thank you for watching, and that's all she wrote.
I made this.